ever felt that presence looming over you? The feeling that you know something is there, but you don't know what? And when you finally turn around and you see it, that thing with the red eyes glowing in the dark that comes up to about knee length, then I welcome you to the legend of the Tails doll. But my one question to you is, can you feel the sunshine? The Tails doll curse is a myth and meme brought on by the belief that in the Sega Genesis game Sonic R, if you play the tag game as Tails doll and tag Metal Knuckles, Metal Sonic, Robotnik, and finally Super Sonic, the Tails doll is supposed to steal your soul. There are many Tails doll sightings posted on YouTube and of course 4chan, and there are plenty of creepypastas surrounding the myth as well. However, most of them are just so ridiculous and they seem to be trying too hard to be scary and wind up being so over the top that you wouldn't even believe some of them. So, out of the ones I've come across, I tried to pick one that was more believable.
The Tails doll is watching you.
Friends Alex and Tony are cleaning out their dorm while having a talk about invincibility for whatever reason, unpacking boxes and finding articles of nostalgia when they come across a box filled with Tony's old Sega Genesis and its games. Being overjoyed at the newfound nostalgia, the pair hooked the Genesis up to the TV and looked through the game collection. Once browsing through all of them, the pair put the games in a big pile and played them one by one. By the time it was midnight, Sonic R was on top of the pile. Laughing and tickling Tony? Alright, it's a little weird. Alex mocks the Tails doll's curse and convinces Tony to help him attempt it, and within a minute, Alex has the game set up. The cursed song, Can You Feel the Sunshine, began to play. But as they played, they quickly remembered how hard it was to play Tag Race. Which I have to say is pretty damn hard. I mean, bumping into signs or walls, or the players would somehow turn in the opposite direction quicker than you could. Just look at that! It was so fucking frustrating! Digression aside, Alex caught up to and tagged Supersonic, ending the race. After trying for so long, they had completely forgotten about the curse, and supposedly the Tails doll picture popped up on the screen, scaring them to the point of almost pissing their pants. It was quiet between the two of them before they decided to leave the room for a snack. Tony recalled the song being burned into his head, but still knew that the Tails doll's picture would still be staring at them when they returned. As they stayed out of the room longer, his fear had lessened. They decided on playing a game called Mr. Nuts next, and so they returned to the room, confronting the Tails doll's image yet again. Alex turned the Genesis off, however, the Tails doll stayed on screen. Now having the diminished fear return, Alex unplugged the Genesis and then the TV, but still the Tails doll stayed and stared. Alex began screaming and cursing at it, 'cause you know, that's what you're supposed to do when shit goes wrong. Who knew? Tony knew he was just provoking it as the eyes on the screen supposedly grew darker. Finally the lights went out, yet the TV was still on, illuminating their faces, and Can You Feel the Sunshine began to play again. Once the song was done, the TV finally turned off. Alex apparently complained about the lights going out, and he was going to file a complaint in the dean's office, but Tony wasn't listening as he could see a faint red glow across the room. Once Alex saw it, they both stood quietly. Whispering heater, the two silently agreed to take refuge in a heater that was sealed off with iron doors in their room. Because, you know, that makes sense too. Screaming now, the two bolted for the heater as the light shot towards them, just barely missing Tony. Catching a glimpse of his face, he knew that the light was coming from the red orb on top of the Tails doll's head, and that his mouth was stitched closed. The doll landed in a pile of boxes as the two continued to run. Tony, being the faster of the two, was ahead of Alex by 2 feet, and as he looked behind him, he supposedly saw the red light rising from the rubble before shooting towards them again. Alex screamed before falling forward, a bloody claw emerging from his head. Taking this to his advantage, Tony flung the door open to the heater, darted inside, and slammed it shut just in time to hear the metallic bang of the Tails doll on the other side. Then he heard pounding and scraping, and finally pacing, before it subsided to silence, save the hum of the heater. Only then did it really hit Tony that Alex was dead, and that he was trapped. He was terrified, and now that the Tails doll was sitting outside, waiting, he had no way out. He knew that he was waiting outside, waiting for him to open the door just to tear him apart. No matter how hard he tried to think of an escape route, something kept playing in his head. Whenever he would think he had found a way that worked, just... And every time he... And whenever he... Will you stop that? Wait a minute. Sunshine. Sunshine. Sunshine! That's it! That's how he could get out. Thinking back to the conversation earlier about invincibility, he realized that the sunshine was the Tails doll's weakness. The song was no curse but a blessing! Duh! For a moment, he was relieved until he thought again. There was no sunshine in the dorm. The blinds were down. Was it even daytime? How long had he been in his temporary safe house? Was it still night or morning? And of course, he had no phone or watch, so there was no way he could have known. How friggin' coincidental that he didn't have anything on him to tell him what time it was. But he was getting desperate to leave, and mustering up all the courage he had, Tony flung the door open. The Tails doll had been waiting for him, but Tony had anticipated that and leapt over him in what he claims was the scariest moment of his life. He ran into the hall, darting for the door, taking note that the entire building had suffered from the earlier blackout. He could see the red light reflecting on the wall ahead of him, making him even more determined to make it outside. If it was night, he was dead. And if it was daylight, there was no guarantee that the sunlight would save him. But when he looked back at it, he didn't care. He could see the black eyes fixated on him and its sewn-up mouth twisted into a smile before the strings began to pop and revealed a mouth that he quotes as too disturbing to write down. Finally making it to the exit, he pushed the door open and ran out, basking in the sunlight of the day. The doll followed but stopped once actually making it outside. It screamed horribly with its head pointed skyward before it began flailing and having its skin boiled and blackened before it began to break off. Then it took a breath and exploded. Supposedly, a loud boom shook the city, and once the boom subsided, there was no trace of the Tails doll left. And if all of that wasn't enough, Tony claims to be put into a mental institution for a while because his story was not believed, and not even Alex's body was enough to convince anyone. As the story comes to a close, he notes that his telling of the story was the first time he was allowed to use a computer since his detainment, and that he was granted the request that his room have a lot of sunshine in it. From there, the lyrics of "Can You Feel the Sunshine" are written. Now, there are plenty of Tails doll stories out there, and I'm sure that some people will find it not as believable as some of the others. However, as far as we know, the Tails doll curse has been disproven. I mean, yes, we can go on Google and look at pictures of the Tails doll, which were probably either photoshopped or just had a real Tails doll in it. Like a plush toy, guys. But some of the stories are just too far-fetched. I mean, there's one where it burns down a school and chases a kid with a chainsaw. I mean, really? Plus, if the Tails doll was just destroyed like it was in a few of the stories, how are there stories of the Tails doll killing its victims? And if it's so fearless, then why would it run away when the cops are called? And of course, this is my personal favorite. At the end of one of these stories, the officers investigating the murder of 2 people supposedly at the hands of the Tails doll sits down and plays the game. What the hell? That's so ridiculous. I can't... No. And that's why I definitely didn't do that one. I don't care how well known it is. That is stupid. Now, I'm not saying that this one is perfect, because it is a little flawed, considering they were like running forever just to get to the heater in their room, which is like a boiler room, I'm assuming. Either way, as far as we can tell, the curse isn't true. Or is it true? I guess that's really for you to decide for yourself. This has been Gamer Theory. I'm Auroric Haze. See you next time. Thanks for watching. And if you do believe, be careful.